Rather than seeing drought as something separate to our businesses, it's embedded in our businesses. We are either not in drought, or we're drying, or we're dry, or we're in recovery. At any given time in our business, the phases that our ag businesses are in at any given time, Australia has 2/3 desert, and the world's surface is actually 2/3 desert. The ag business cycle, when people work through it, the cycle has three centre circles: social, economic and environmental. What are we doing in those three areas to be ready for the next phase?
In this next season, I am predominantly focusing on the women in my community, particularly the ecological community, but there are other sectors, and how they have navigated their way in life, some up and down and others in a remarkably direct way, and how that maybe differs from the way our male counterparts have operated in business. Hello, today is my second interview. This one is with Helen Lewis, who is the operating CEO of the Ecological Outcome Verification group in holistic management. And so she has a big, long background in being an environmental educator, in policy, a range of different things like this in this area. But I'm going to get Helen to sort of summarize that. What are the key elements that she is bringing to what she's working with right now, and also what were the critical changes that have formed where she's come to right now. Welcome, Helen.
Thanks, Sam. Great to be here. Fantastic to be having a chat. Yeah, so I guess my background is policy, politics, agribusiness, and advocacy. And I started my holistic management journey back in 1998 when I did the practitioner course with Bruce Ward, and how he was talking about the grazing. I'd sort of already planned a farm back when I was about 12 or 13 to actually emulate that and move animals around. And I thought, well, it would be quite nice for a mob of animals to move onto fresh grass, and that would be good. And then by the time they've gone off, I'd have fresh grass again because it would have grown. So I kind of had that model in my mind when I was quite young. And then in addition to that, I did the first day of, we were talking about the decision-making, holistic decision-making, and I went, oh, this is how you make good policy. This is how you do good community development, because I'd just come out of policy making and policy advising and community development work. So, and that is a different use of the decision-making and the holistic management, because, I mean, it is holistic management. So it's actually a management process looking at the whole. And so I think people hear the holistic bit and just forget the management bit and go, well, what is all that rah-rah? But I think we really need to focus on each word is actually really key and really different, and has a purpose. And holistic is obviously the whole, and management is genuinely managing and making decisions. And it's trying to make decisions about the whole, which we summarize with people, environment, and prosperity, or social, economic, and environmental. So those are the three, legs of the stool, and we want to make sure that they're actually in balance. Because if we have a wobbly if we have a three-legged pot with an odd leg, it's going to fall over. So let's actually make sure when we're talking about holistic management, we're really just talking about keeping in balance, thinking and considering the impact on the people, the environment, and our longer-term prosperity. So my background, yes, so I started back in 1998. I finished my educator training in 2002, and worked with Brian Welberg in inside-outside management for 10 or 15 years. And we did lots of training, and then I really doubled down on the decision-making side of it, because I found that universal. I mean, the decision-making process in holistic management is valid whether or not you have a fish and chip shop or whether on a 50,000 hectare property. So it's a very, very valuable process that people can use.
And you came from a background, you were talking about being in Ag Force and working in policies for Queensland. What was it that you were talking about, a critical decision that was key to changing the way you were going?
So in the policy side of things, I've used holistic management to develop the ag business policy, which is now, it has been embedded into the drought management for Queensland. And I was chair of the Ag Force Drought Policy Committee back in 2017, sat on the National Farmers Federation Drought Policy Committee as a result of that, but came out of a meeting and just had just written and drawn the rough outline of this ag business cycle, which is actually, rather than seeing drought as something separate to our businesses, it's actually embedded in our businesses. And we actually are either not in drought, or we're drying, or we're dry, or we're in recovery. At any given time in our business, they are
As
the
a desert.
four, well, as the four, they're four key areas of they are the phases that our ag businesses are in at any given time. And given Australia has 2/3 desert, and well, the world's surface is actually 2/3 desert, this actually, the ag business cycle, when people work through it and have the cycle has the three center circles, social, economic, and environmental. And so what are we doing in those three areas to be ready for the next phase? So what are we doing when we're not in drought to be ready for drying? What are we doing in drying to be ready for dry? And what are we doing in dry to be ready for recovery?
Great.
And that, then we go around again. And I think being very clear about what are the indicators of the shift of phase. So what are my indicators that's telling me that I'm moving from not in drought to drying? Like, what am I looking for in the landscape? What am I looking for in the bank account? How am I mentally? How am I socially going when we're doing this shift through these phases? And again, it's about being prepared, making early decisions. It allows us to think ahead, to say, and be aware of how we're feeling and how things are tracking out in the paddock, so that we can make early decisions and manage drought better. And the idea is, if we're going through this ag business cycle, we've gone through it once and we've been prepared and we've actually put all those things in place. Ultimately, we go into drought later and we come out sooner. That is ultimately what will happen.
And has it changed the mindset of farmers to have it laid out so clearly like that? Do you think they're kind of in a la-la land of not acknowledging something, even if they're experienced it 100 times, that because they don't even know exactly when drought will come? Do you think that's part of the problem, that they're not looking at those cycles at whatever length they are? Is that part of the problem, and has it clarified it?
Yeah, so I think that's it. I mean, and the economic question, I mean, we were talking about just the feed, do I spend money on feed, or do I get rid of my animals? And so, or do I not plant? And do I plant? Do I not plant? Do I feed animals? Do I not? I mean, feeding animals it's only a good idea after the drought's ended. If you didn't go broke doing it, and if the animals came through it. So there's a lot of ifs. You know, is it something that you're prepared to do when you don't know how long it's going to be for? Or are you going to set yourself some benchmarks or some limits on times and dates and for how long, that you're actually prepared to keep those animals going? So those are the things that I think this starts. It raises the question. It allows people to actually make some decisions. And if you're wanting to go into drought later and come out sooner, going through that ag business cycle is helpful. It's now embedded into the drought management plan that we have to, in Queensland, that we have to put into the government if we want to access loans and grants from our government, Q Rider, it's called up here. But
And does it also influence the banks? You mentioned at one point that the banks are pushy about getting people back out there after a drought. Maybe is it something you can present to them and say, well, the grass is only an inch tall and it needs to be 3 inches, or something that gives them, you've got leverage with?
Yeah, well, and I think that's where people who are looking after their land, and I guess, again, with that holistic management lens, if you've got a grazing plan, if you can demonstrate that it hasn't fully recovered yet, you've got photos, you know what that looks like, you can use that as evidence, then you've got some more leverage with the bank to actually say, well, I'm going to hang on for another 3 months before I actually have genuine recovery, because otherwise you can end up with a false start. I mean, if you go in too hard and you graze, it doesn't then set, and you can go backwards. So you might recover, but it will take you longer. And so it's better to actually let it grow in the front end rather than take a graze and then not have that ongoing recovery.
I suppose an example would be, right now we're going through a green drought where there's grass, it looks green, but it's not very long and it's not growing.
There's no substance to it. So you wouldn't want to be on that yet.
So if people had bought the cows back on again, they would have overgrazed, and then they're ruined for the next
Potentially.
cycle.
Well, yeah,
Or their
potentially. I
hand
mean, and
feeding.
it depends on how long they stay. I mean, overgrazing is a function of time, so it depends on how long they keep those animals on for. But yeah, I mean, and everyone's got their own management, and some people, graze short grass very successfully and move on quickly, and it comes back beautifully. So there's a variety of things, but of course, it's a nuance, and I think after a drought, allowing grass to actually grow up after drought is a key component for longevity and really getting a genuine start in the new season.
And this software program, which I think is called BART, this is something that's giving you these metrics that you can give the farmers very quickly because of the software. Is it also lending itself to the biodiversity credits that are being introduced globally?
Yeah, so the Ecological Outcome Verification program that the Holistic Management Co-op runs is now using the BART digital app for data capture. So when we go out and monitor the 4 ecosystem processes on landscape, farmers are asking us to come and actually do a bit of a health check of their landscape function. So we're checking their water cycle, whether or not it's retaining water, keeping water, minimizing evaporation, maximizing mineral cycle, which is converting manure and minerals into soil, and maximizing our energy flow, so sunlight capture, really having that green growing plant, restoring the energy into the roots, and then also the community dynamics, which is the interaction and dynamic and relationship between plants and critters. Those 4 ecosystem processes, when they're doing really well and when they're thriving and they're functioning, then you have a resilient business, and that's what we're really aiming for, and we're measuring whether or not in any given bioregion that the property is based in across Australia, we're checking whether or not how your land is playing out or is functioning compared to the capacity of that bioregion. And so
They can come in and just get an assessment. They don't have
yeah,
to
they
be
can. Yeah,
doing
that's
anything. They can
no.
be conventional, but there's
Absolutely,
no
absolutely.
barriers at all.
There's no barrier to entry. We are practice agnostic. You can be doing anything you like. But if you just want to check to see how your landscape is going based on those 4 foundations, I mean, if those 4 foundations are functioning, you are then building a sound business, and you've got some resilience factored in.
The 900,000 hectares that you're currently got
Yep.
in your system with all your farmers, how many of them have taken that information, even if they just do the information,
Yep.
and then changed some of their practice because of it?
So 80% would actually take on that information and actually just check that their management decisions and the way in which they're using their toolbox, the management tools, are trying to enhance and or maintain their environmental health index, which is the ultimate score that you get from our EOV program. And so when we're then supporting that with management action plans, data reviews, so once you have your data done, you can actually get that. You can have a conversation with someone about the data. What is it telling you? How might you go about using it to make decisions? And so we're trying to support farmers to maximize the management value from the data we're collecting every year, and so that they can improve, get more resilient, and actually meet their production outcomes that they want as well. And so in regards to the biodiversity and all the other markets, I think what we're trying to get back to is the core essence of how nature functions. And for nature to function well, we need water cycle to be functioning, mineral cycle, energy capture, and that dynamic of community and that diversity. And sorry?
Microbial community.
Yeah, and that's all part of that. Exactly. That dynamic is actually above and below the soil surface, multitude of species, age, structure, everything. And so it's the dynamic that occurs when you have that diversity. And those 4 functions are fundamental. And if they are thriving, you are creating the right conditions for biodiversity to show up and for carbon to be sequestered. So actually, fundamentally, healthy landscape function will help people be prepared and or engage in those other markets if they want to, because they know then year on year that they are creating the right conditions with their management for their land function to be optimal.
If farmers want to also do a carbon or biodiversity project, they've already got metrics to let them know how they're faring with it.
Well, yes, the metrics for EOV are fundamentally whether or not the conditions are right for biodiversity and for carbon. But and so that's why it's great for the annual measurement, because often in carbon projects it might be only every 5 years. So this actually gives people an annual check-in to see if what they're doing is actually leading them towards what should be a good outcome in 5 years' time when they do their next carbon checks. I think that's useful. It's a useful parameter for the measurement for that.
Mm.
And the other metrics, though, that would be required for the other, for the market forces, like the markets, are somewhat different, and they obviously do far bigger, deeper soil samples. They do a whole heap of other things that we
Which a
don't.
lot of farmers in Australia don't even want to know about. So I just think it's worth mentioning, but I think
Mm,
it's their correlative. When I first got introduced to what you guys were doing,
mm.
my understanding was that it was more about a type of certification that reflected the ecology of the whole landscape that could be for people that wanted to buy into that in the produce that was coming off, like an
Yeah,
organic certification. Would you
yeah. So
say there's a comparative in that space?
yes. Well, so it's a verification. Yeah. And so what we're doing is, because it's outcome focused, it's not a ticker box. So it's not practice driven, it's outcome driven. So we're actually verifying the outcome of the monitoring, which means that if people have got a increasing EHI, ecological health index, and or they're maintaining their ecological health index after a result of their monitoring, then they actually get to that they can access the land to market um, supply chain opportunities. At the moment in wool, we're seeing anyone who is land to market and RWS, they're getting a 10 to 15% premium in the marketplace, because buyers
Great.
are looking for the land to market, which means that they have done the ecological outcome verification and they've been deemed regenerating by Savory Institute, which is our third party verifier of the ecological data. And I think it means that it's got two functions. EOV is claim is that the land is regenerating, like if you get regenerating status. When land to market look at that and say, right, we'd love to buy your product, or have your product part of our supply chain, or we have a buyer for your product, they then do a chain of custody, which ensures that the same amount of product, or the product, is coming from that land that is regenerating, and so that the product then is verified that it is coming from land that is regenerating. So there's a step change once we enter into the land to market area
Mm.
with that chain of custody. And it mitigates greenwashing. It really connects the product to the land that is regenerating. And that's a key component of having that integrity in the marketplace.
I think you're doing a great job. I love hearing that this has continued. It was a very complex thing when I first heard it, but you seem to have made it much clearer to understand. Does it apply to cropping as well? Or is it or only just for cropping being used for animals on an animal
Yeah, so
system?
mixed cropping, mixed enterprise with cropping, with animals being used in the cropping, so with pasture cropping and crops being grown for forage and processes like that, so animals are involved, is possibly the best use of our monitoring in those circumstances. In big broad acre cropping, I mean, the protocol does have allowances for that. It's probably an area that we could expand into and get better at, but it definitely does relate to people who are doing pasture cropping, cover cropping, integrating animals into grazing with, even if it's them eating the stubble and keeping some ground cover, minimum till, farmers could use this. So anyone with ground cover and some sort of interaction with animals, because, it's not just your cropping area that we'll monitor. When we actually set land bases up, they're strated. So we actually put in long-term sites in the different stratas of the landscape. You might have 1, 2, or 3 long-term, and then you have the 10 short-terms. And those 10 short-term sites will be scattered across the landscape as well. We have a diversity of sites for the monitoring. Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, we have some foundational things. You have the context, you have your toolbox. We know there's the four insights, which is about the brittle, non-brittle, predator prey, time, and holism. and then you actually just manage accordingly. Like just it's like this it's a bit choose your own adventure. There's not a right or wrong way of managing holistically. Like it's a holistic management. It's actually there's some fundamentals. And if you're out there set stocking, you've got to ask yourself why you're doing that, because you're actually not realizing the value of time, which is a clear insight in how nature functions, particularly in a brittle thinning environment. But set stocking for a short period of time might be exactly what you need to get those thistles back to open up your country under that camp that you used to have, and then next season you'll bring it back into a planned graze. Bob's your uncle, you're done. Like that's great. So it's still valid, but how long are you doing for? Is it continuous? Like the other day, we ploughed up a paddock. We wouldn't normally plough up a paddock, but we wanted to try what the difference would be between ploughing and direct drilling some pasture. And so we did that, and it was just really interesting to see what the result was. We don't intend to do that forever on that piece of land, but it was something that we wanted to try and see if we got a better result because we did it. And so it's about that safe to fail trial. It's about asking the question, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, we're not going to plow the guts out of that paddock forever. It's simply trying something to see and monitoring and then adjusting next time. And next time we may have improved it enough for us to just direct drill straight in next time. Who knows? We will see. But that's the point, is you're trying, you're checking, you have another go. I think that's to actually have the right. There's no right or wrong, and I think I get concerned when people start saying what's right and wrong. It's because it's so contextual. But there are some fundamental principles for sure. And if you want to do holistic plan grazing, yes, you've got to follow the aid memoir. And yes, there are principles attached. If you want to actually embed this into your business, yes, there's some guidelines. But ultimately, managing holistically is up to you based on your context and how involved you want to get with it. It is a choose your own adventure, which is great. There's no recipe. As soon as we get into recipes, we get into failures to capture
So I think
the landscape.
The thing that I've liked about what I've understood with it is that the older farmers, which are usually the ones that don't want to change, like I sat at a cropping thing with someone telling me that he was 6 generations now in their family cropping, and they had thousands of hectares. They've always been cropping, and they've done the same crop over and over again, or maybe 2 or 3 crops, whoever knows what it is. But I'm just curious, those old timers who think everything they're doing is wonderful, but they maybe don't even have a historical note of when something was different. Do you have any of them just curious to sort of see and use the ecological markers to see how they compare against the national standards? Because I would think they're the hardest ones to change.
Yeah, so people approach us, they want to know their environmental, like whether or not they're ecologically
sound,
I guess, do the health check. And so I guess because we're not practice oriented, we're not really focused on finding out how they're practicing. Obviously if people come and we do the monitoring, the results aren't great and they want to do something, and it's all driven by the farmer wanting to make the change. We can help them and obviously we use holistic principles to help them. And so that's where we're supporting people and helping them make the change and just converting the information into action. And that's where we're really helping people return their knowledge into results in their businesses and that production part of their business.
Do you have enough educators across the ground? I met a wonderful young boy called Silas in Tasmania who was so passionate and had been passionate since he was 7 years old. Pretty amazing. And was so knowledgeable. I was really kind of blown away by him. And he was only in his early 20s or something.
Yeah, early 20s, yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
so Silas is one of our lead monitor, and absolutely been invaluable for the technology of the BART as well as out in the paddock, and he's got a unique way of checking what plant is plant. He tends to eat and taste them to find out.
Does he really? That's cute.
So he's all over the plants and the species and the plant ID, and he does a great job, Silas.
Fascinating. I did a nature walk with somebody on my own property, and I don't grow anything. And to me, it looks almost like a desert with a few scrubs coming out of it. And the nature person will point out, oh no, this is the most extraordinary forest I've seen. And there's 150 different species of flora. And I'm like, you serious? Like there's a leaf coming up somewhere. And they say, oh, these would be 500 years old. These tree barks, haven't seen this like in all the forests around. And I was like, oh, wow. Like
Yeah.
I just have no idea how to read that sort of landscape, a native landscape in now very strangely, like you see all these European pictures of forests of stuff and there's lush and rainforests and gazillions of plants everywhere. But like stark, a stick.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. It's the difference between the brittle tending environment and the non-brittle environment.
Yeah.
And then, and I think this is a key point. 2/3 of the world's surface is desert, and so it's a more brittle tending environment. And we applied a lot of our farming practices from a non-brittle environment, being Europe and England, and the eastern side of America. And we've seen the result of that with the depletion of our environmental function in our landscape. And so I think this is where holistic management comes into its own. It actually helps us restore that with animals in a brittle tending environment, and even in a non-brittle environment, animals play a role. But it's about time, and there's some nuances about how we manage our livestock, how we work with nature, using the tools from the toolbox appropriately for each, whether or not it's a brittle tending environment or a non-brittle environment. And because the consequences are different. And we really just need to be clear on what the impact will be when we use the various tools in whichever environment we're in, a brittle tending or a non-brittle environment. So the tools in the toolbox are technology, fire, rest when we lock country up, and living organisms, animal impact grazing, microorganisms, all the microscopic animals that the party under the soil is keeping us all alive. That's part of that, but they're tools in our toolbox. And so technology, I think that there's a real nuance that we have to start talking about. A shovel is a shovel, but it's blunt if we're using it in the wrong environment, or we're using it incorrectly. If we're bearing ground in a brittle tending environment, it's going to stay bare. In a non-brittle environment, it's going to recover and it'll grass over quickly. But there are, it's understanding how the result we'll get when we use certain tools in either of those two environments.
So I love that you've sort of pointed all those things out. What I'm really interested in as I suppose a woman in a fairly male dominated universe, being ag, what have you seen in specifically even in taking over the holistic management? What have you seen that you've been able to bring to it that hasn't changed? Because I've observed in a lot of these very male dominated areas, there's kind of a no change thing happens for a long time. And I'm curious to see what, if anything, you were able to effect.
Well, I think it's actually, the nature of holistic management is changed, because you're always asking some really leading questions about, is this the root cause? Okay, well, what else? What else could I be doing? And the decision making in itself is asking you to come up with a whole heap of options about what you could be doing instead. So you've got to be creative. It is about research. It is about finding all the different ways you could skin the cat. It's actually really, it is really sort of, it provokes that thinking of solution and finding a way. So that's great. We're starting on the right sort of energy. We're starting out with the right headspace as well, because we're trying to solve, and we don't necessarily have all the answers. Like, let's look outside and see what else we could do. So I think that's very beneficial. I think it's fascinating. I think the values-based decision making, the context process within holistic management is really powerful, and that is values-based and it's vision-based. So a context will have values and vision. And I must say, when I've been training people, it's certainly the area where we spend the afternoon trying to extract values from people, and people have time to write their values down. This is where you see the difference between men and women. the tendency of women to write pages and pages and pages, and men will write 4 or 5 words. So it's but then also then to embed that, to bring that about into a context, and which is the reference point for decision making, so that the decisions you make and the actions you take are actually aligned to your values and your vision, which is your context. So that is ultimately what we're trying to get to. And I think really elevating the value of the decision making process has been helpful in this space.
What is the sort of key inspiring points for you? Because a lot of people struggle to continue in this industry because there's so many obstacles come across, but you seem as though you've really gone pretty much from strength to strength in it. But have I missed something in that journey?
No, I think it's really about how can it's about making a difference. So, I mean, a driver for me throughout, all the work I've done, from community development, policy, agribusiness, it's all just about making a difference. And so, and everything, I mean, it's like most people's careers, you end up having you start, and then there's stepping stones, and you might go over here for a bit and then come back. And then, so there's these stepping stones and a skill development. I remember seeing a quote. It's that notion that by sharing our knowledge and our experiences and our capacity, you live on. Like, it's just by knowing stuff and not doing anything about that or sharing it, then you're not really actually giving of yourself to the betterment of. And so it's actually about making a difference. It's okay, well, I've got this much now, so now I need to do this, and now then what's next after that? So I think it's that progressing through, like, on the journey, and every time you nuance, you get better at, you understand more. Like, it's ongoing learning. It's an awareness. It's ongoing learning. It's sharing, and it's providing, trying to make a contribution at the end of the day.
And so it would sound from what you said that you haven't really had a really major hiccup in that your journey's flowed from one thing to another pretty fluidly, which is in itself kind of fascinating.
Yeah. I would suggest. I mean, I really haven't.
That's wonderful. We're not trying to give you.
That's the thing. Like, it has been that, but I also believe that that's part of the holistic management process, because I've now been managing holistically my own life for like 25 years, and I've thought about
Your
things. A forward plan, and I also make decisions towards how I want to live my life. So making a difference is a fundamental theme in my life, and so everything I'm doing is in that vein, and it's about uplift. It's about trying to make that contribution.
It's wonderful, Helen. I think it's so nice to hear someone actually say a story like that. Most people will say, oh, it's pretty heavy here, or this. It sounds like because you plan, because you live in that holistic mindset and applying it that way, you're actually reaping the rewards of that.
Yeah, I feel like we can always do better. It's not perfect, but who'd want perfect? Like, that's what is perfect anyway. But,
Life is messy.
Life is messy, and we stuff up, we make mistakes, all those things happen. But at the same time, though, the trajectory progress has been made, and that's good.
That's wonderful.
And I guess, at the end of the day, if we don't monitor, how do you manage? You have to monitor to manage. So you've got to know what you've got in order to get better at it, or to make some changes to get the outcome you're looking for. So I think that's where, it's a fundamental requirement in business to monitor. So, and we monitor our health with our smartwatches. We monitor our finances with our software. Maybe don't. Maybe don't. But the facility is there to do it if we choose. And so now, and then the very foundation of what actually keeps us alive, because we need a farmer 3 times a day, like, let's monitor that and know whether or not we're moving in the right direction, because that's actually what sustains life. And it is, and then to me, that's pretty paramount to the whole being health checked. Yes, that's right. We do. I think the run the farm might be a little bit of an overstretch. I am a co-owner of the farm. I think my husband Ian does most of the farming. Yeah, definitely. I'm there for the meetings and we chat about where we're going, but that's it. Help with the planning, help with the strategy. The day-to-day function is definitely Ian's bag, which is a great thing. It's good. So, but lovely to be here on the farm, and we value add and we support a community-supported agriculture supply chain into Brisbane through Echo Valley, and we also value add our own product and sell locally at the local markets. Which is great. I think it's about your context. It's about how you want to spend your time and how you want to farm. The personalities make a big difference of how the farm functions. And I think that is a key factor. I mean, there is absolutely no point for people to get into high stock density if they don't want to be out in the paddock changing fences or doing that over 3 or 4 times a day or every half hour, whatever that looks like. If people don't want to do that, if that's not how they want to spend their time, they want to be able to read their book from 12 till 2 in the afternoon, or whatever it is, that's where I think we need to have that's where the context comes into its own, because every farm is unique, every business is unique. And I think it's a decision that has to be made based on where you're at. And even like the first 5 years of when you've got your kids under 5, 2 or 3 kids under 5, you're then running around. Why would you then want to add a complexity of high density? Maybe when they're 12, 10 to 15, and they can actually manage themselves in the house and you can get busy. Like, these are the things, it's seasons of life. And what I love about holistic management, it's all contextual based. And so you're making decisions based on how you want to live your life right now. And the holistic context gets updated every year. And so you're always making decisions to your current context. And that then gives you a decision that's right for you right now. In 10 years' time, the same decision, the same problem or issue might come up, and you might use the same answers that you had, but a completely different answer will be right for you right now in 10 years' time. Because you've evolved, the farm's evolved, the business involved, whether it's farm business or a town business or just simply life. We've all grown, we've changed, and so our context is unique at that time. And decisions then can be made based on that. So you are actually always making decisions right for you right now. So if people are interested in ecological outcome verification, they can go to holisticmanagement.au, our website, and find out some more about what we're doing in the co-op. And if anyone would like to reach out about decision making or holistic management, again, obviously the holisticmanagement.au, but if anyone wants to talk to me personally, I'd be more than happy to talk to anyone. CEO at holisticmanagement.au. Thanks. No worries. That's good. Always loving a chat, as you can tell. Thanks for the opportunity. Much appreciated. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Integration, where we explore the strategies that connect heart, land and capital. If today's episode sparks something in you, share it forward. Until next time, stay curious and keep building the world you believe in.